I'm now recording. This is the scheduled meeting of ITSC 2309. It is 6 o'clock, or 5:59 anyway, on August 7th, 2018. Let's see, the topic for tonight, well, we are approaching the end of the semester, and I'm sneezing tonight for some reason. Okay, I got something that's going to warm everybody's heart. I don't believe that we are going to do a final exam in this summer class. We just don't have time. I want to do one more module after this one, and I think that's going to put us on to Thursday. And be doing well if we get that done. So I'm going to try on Thursday. I'll talk about what I'm going to do. Tonight, the module is for tonight. It is module 14, using database views, VIEWS, and I'm going to talk about database views tonight, obviously. Let's see. Okay, a database view is essentially, let's first talk about a query. Here is a query, just any select from where query. So pick any query you want, almost any query you want, and we can create a view out of that query. So what I do when I create a view is I save the query in the database as a table. I save the query, not the data. But it acts like a table. It behaves like a table. It does everything a table can do, except it isn't really a table. It is derived from other tables. Thank you. So the query itself is saved, but the data aren't. You may remember, those of you who have taken an Access, that when you create a query in Access, you give it a name and save it. That's not really a query, that is a view. A view persists. An SQL query is just an SQL statement. But when you create a view, you are essentially saving your query. Make sense? Let me see. Okay, I guess you meant to. Okay, asking questions here. I see you guys are muted. I didn't mean to mute you, but let's see. So we have a database object, and I can select from it. So the name of this view is California Vendors. Now let's take a look at what that would look like in an SQL. By the way, it works the same way in any other database language like SQL and Oracle or Access or anything, except we call it a query in Access. We don't call it a view. So here is the query I'm going to use. It's just a plain old select vendor name from vendors where the vendor state is CA. Yeah, no problem. Here I have, as usual, when I create things, if it's not null, drop it. So that allows me to create it. Now, here's one important point in SQL Server. When you create a view, it must be the only statement in its script. What does Go do? Go breaks this script up into others. So this is a script up here, lines 1 through 10 are a script, then 11 it says Go. That's a new script. Now we create the view. After the view is created, we go. So a create view must be bracketed by Go statements unless it is the first statement in the script. So it just has to be, I don't, Don't know whether you can do a use without doing a go or not, but you can. You should anyway. Bottom line is, whenever you create a view, have a go before it and a go immediately after it. Creating views require that. It is good practice to do when anytime you use that word create, what you have in there is bracketed by goes. You don't need to do it if you are just simply writing SQL code. But anytime you're creating things, usually you have to have go, then you create it, then you have another go that ends the script. I'm going to come back to this one in this line in just a moment. Okay, so this one creates the view CA vendors as, select vendor name from vendor state is CA. So if I were to do that, execute, notice it says commands completed, but it didn't show me anything because it didn't run the script. All it did was create the view. Now I can say select everything from CA vendors. Now you might remember back when we were in the subqueries, and you could have a table defined, or a SQL statement defined in the select. Okay, so it would be a little bit like, let me see if I can do it here. Suppose we had this, select everything from have to give it a name. Now what is this? This is a derived table. Now this should work. I expect it to work. And if I do it, I get all of the vendors from California. So notice that this is a derived table. It is given a name. So the SQL is written into the from line. In this approach up here, I create the view. I give it a name first, and then I have that name on the from line. So the two are very similar. This is essentially what I did in this statement on 2122 was essentially this. Here it's named X, and up here it's named CA vendors. Basically, I'm creating a derived table, but I'm giving my derived table a name and storing it in the database. And this is typically what I do. This line 13 through 16 here is typically what I do instead of this. So if I wanted to join this derived table with something else, I would not write it into the from line as a derived table, or what our book calls a derived table. Not everybody calls it that. But I would create a view first, and then I would join the table with the view, because a view can be joined just like anything else, just like any other table, because a view is a table. And I think I'm going to sneeze. And I hope that doesn't keep up. Okay. Now, let's come back and talk about this with the check option. What, suppose I were to delete from this view. Could I delete from the view? Let's see. What about BFI Industries? So suppose I wrote something like this. Update. Well, let's just delete. D-E-L-E-C-T. D-E-L-E. Oh, let's see. ASC signs. Goodness. Now, if I delete from a view, what do you expect to happen? I guess you're, let me check you guys and see if you're muted. Okay. Well, everybody, unless you've muted yourself, I've unmuted you. So it's up to you if you want to mute or not. What do you expect to happen? You may now talk.
Okay, one record will be deleted.
Okay. Do you expect it to delete then from the view? Do you expect that record to be deleted from the vendor's table?
From the view.
Only deleted from the view.
Yeah, I think so.
But since the view depends on the vendor's table, the data that are in the view are actually stored in the vendor's table. So I don't really have any data in the view to delete. So if I'm going to delete, I have to delete from the vendor's table.
I see.
Do you expect it to delete from the vendor's table? Answer to your question is that it will delete from the vendor's table. So if I were to execute this, and it says one row affected, so that's ASC signs. And now when I go back and look again, either at the vendor or at the table, I will find that now I only have 74 rows where I had 75 a minute ago, and ASC signs now no longer exists in the table. It is deleted. The record is deleted. Okay. In general, in a view, I can do anything with a view that I could do with a table. For example, I'm getting some feedback, so I'm going to go ahead and mute again. I'll undo that in a minute. I'm getting a feedback through a mic someplace. Create view California vendors, and this one is insert. In order to insert, I have to have all of the required fields. The simplest way to get them all is to say select everything. So in other words, my CA vendors where are going to be all of the fields, and such that the state is California. So when I select from CA vendors insert, I'm going to see all of the fields. Now I will be able to insert into this view, and it will insert into the underlying table. Okay. And so I could try that and it would work. Okay. And so let's see what we have here. Select. Notice I'm going to see all of my records, all of my fields. Execute. I don't know what I did wrong there. Execute that. Okay, notice that I put this delete in there before the go. And remember, I told you that it had to have a go before it and a go after it. So I cannot get anything else in there into the create view. I have to have go before it and go after it. And I can't have any other lines of code. I can't have a delete in there with it. Must be the only thing to get there. Now, the question is, can I update this view? And I believe I can. So I say update. Update CA set vendor state equals Texas. Where vendor ID is equal to 4. And so that would be job track. And if I spell it correctly, so that would be this guy right here, the first one in there, job track, vendor ID 4. And Texas needs to be in quotes. Okay, now what's going to happen? Unmuting unless you've muted yourself. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Update this. I'm trying to update this. I'm trying to set the vendor state to be Texas, where the vendor ID is 4.
So job track state will change to Texas.
Job track will change to Texas, and I agree it will. However, the way that it gets into this view is because the vendor state is CA. So what I'm doing here is something that I really should not do. I am using the view to change the table in such a way that job track vendor ID 4 will no longer appear. So if I were to execute this, and I expect it to work, 1 row affected, and now if I go back and look at the data again from CA vendors insert, I find that job track is not here any longer. If I were to go look at the table, I would find that job track's vendor state had changed to TX. Okay, we typically use views to enforce database security. Most of the time, it is considered a security breach if I can change using the view, if I can change the data such that a record no longer appears in the view. Now I can delete the record, but I should not be able to change it in the view, and that's where this bit about with check option comes in. So if I add this, and we should add it with check option, so create the view as whatever it is with check option. Now when I put that in there, execute. When I put in there, now I'm going to find that when I try to change this wireless mouse drives me nuts. Okay, let's go vendor ID is 6. Now, vendor ID 4 is already gone, but let's go to vendor ID 6, California Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to try to change the vendor state to 6. It'd be strange to have a California Chamber of Commerce in Texas, wouldn't it? So I don't want this to happen, and I expect it will not happen. In fact, I get an error message, attempted update failed, because the target view specifies with check option, or basically I'm trying to change the data such that they no longer appear in the view, and it's going to block me. Does that make sense? With check option. Okay, so create view, It's very simple. I just take any SQL statement. Any SQL statement? Yes, any SQL statement. Can it have a table join? Yes, it can have a table join. Can it have an inner join, outer join? Yes, yes. Can it have a subquery in it? Absolutely can. It can have unions in it. It can have anything that you want to do in it. It can be any select from where statement. Now, I can't create a view out of a delete statement, although sometimes in Access it looks like you can, but I can't do that in the real world. Let's see, if I put the check option on it, which I should, anytime I create a view, unless there's some really strange reason not to, I typically do not want people changing the view, changing data using the view, such that the row that they either inserted or deleted from that view or updated in that view, now they no longer appear in the view. So I don't want it to, I don't want you to be able to insert a row into that view where the vendor state is not CA. It'll check that. So I can't insert a row that's where the vendor state is Texas. This is commonly done because many times you will have a situation as you're setting up the database where I have various departments, and the human resources department can look at all of the employee records. So on my employee records, the human resources gets to look at all of them, except theirs. You're not allowed, human resources is not allowed to look at human resources personnel jackets. Why? Because then they'd be managing their own jacket, and that's not good.
But you can delete, right?
You can delete from a view, yes.
Even with the check option.
Well, with the check option, you can delete from a view. I would not be able to delete a record that was not in the view. So, for example, that view only contains vendors from California, so I can delete any vendor where the vendor state is California. But I would not be able to delete a record where the vendor state was Idaho, because they wouldn't be in the view. I can only delete records that are in the view. I can only update records that are in the view. I cannot update a record that is in the view such that it drops out of the view. Okay?
Can we then insert a vendor where the vendor state is California?
You can insert a vendor where the vendor state is California, yes. But that's all you can insert into this one. So your insert has to satisfy the where condition. Okay. Let's see. What else was I gonna? Okay, let's go back to my example where the HR department, human resources, cannot view their own records. So I would have select everything from employee records where the department does not equal, quote, HR, close quote. So if your department is HR, you cannot use this view to view your own records, but you can see everybody else's records, and I would have a with check option on that because I don't want you being able to insert a record into HR. So before you can update a record or insert a record, the result of it would have to be in the view, and it gets in the view by not being equal to HR. Makes sense. Now I would have another view. And this one I would make available to, it's usually payroll that gets it, and that would be the HR. So select all records from employee records where the department is equal to HR, and this would be available to the payroll department typically. So HR manages payroll's records and payroll manages HR's. And so you typically do this with a view. And the check option gives you security on the view such that you cannot manipulate data in such a way that the row, whatever the end result of that row is, falls out of or is not in the view. So this one right here, where I'm trying to change it to Texas, would fail. If I tried to insert a record into the view and it did not satisfy this where clause, the insert would fail. Some other things on inserts, for example, I cannot insert a duplicate primary key, and that's going to apply to the table. So a view is not perfectly safe. By trying to insert into the view, I can find out some things about the data that are in the table. For example, if I wanted to find out if there was somebody with employee ID 1234, I could try to insert into my view, and if it failed on a duplicate primary key, I would know that such a record exists. So this is something I'd like to prevent, but there's no way to do it with a view. Okay. Some other things I've said about a table. A table is not ordered. A table is not ordered. Now, this is not strictly enforced by SQL Server, but in most database products, Oracle, for example, you cannot create a view that has an order by in it. So I cannot have a view that is ordered. SQL Server will let you create a view. Let me double check on that. Let me try it and see. But I'm pretty sure I can. Order by vendor name. Let's try that one.
Call from 807.
Okay. So I expect this to work. I'll drop the view first. And I think in SQL Server, this will work. Okay. Order by is invalid in views. Okay. So I cannot do an order by. It seems like on the older versions of SQL Server, it would let me do that. I'm glad to see that they've gotten in step with everybody else and don't let you do order by. Now, how can I get it? What if I wanted to take the top 10% of something? So I want to select the top select top 10% of vendor name. Let's see, how do I do that? Top. Isn't that right? Top 10. Sometimes I have to go look up the syntax. Okay, should be top 10, and then I got to spell out 10%. top 10. Percent vendor name, where state is California. And I think I can do that. But that just gives me the top right at the very, of the way it is. Don't I have to have it if it doesn't make any sense. Order by.
Question.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I wanted to find out, how do you alter a constraint on a table? I was trying to like on the Scratch database we made. I'd created 2 tables on there, and then I went back to say drop table, blah blah blah, but it couldn't drop it. It says due to the constraint. So I was wondering, how do you?
Okay, so the constraint is a primary key, foreign key.
Yes.
Well, you drop your foreign key first. And that's one way. There's several ways around that. You can say if I have 2 tables, phi, and phi is holding a foreign key into phi. Okay, so phi is referencing phi. I can drop phi first.
Okay.
Okay, I can say drop phi cascade constraints. Okay, that will drop it. So that means just drop the constraint too. I can also say alter table. Let's see, the constraint would be in phi, T-A-B, phi, no check.
On primary key.
Yeah. The constraint name.
Okay.
So that turns it off. So it turns a no check off. So phi is holding a foreign key into phi. Usually I just tell people to drop phi first, but you can say drop phi, cascade constraints, and that will drop the foreign key. Okay. Or you can alter table phi and you can just turn it off. You can also alter table phi, drop constraint name. So you can drop the constraint altogether because this constraint exists outside of the table. So another one is drop Okay.
Okay. And then to turn it back on, you just to turn the constraint back on, do you just
check instead of no check, make it say check, alter table phi, check constraint name.
Okay.
Okay. I go back to this top 10%. Okay. So what if I wanted to create a view out of this? If I try to create the view, right, I'm going to have an issue because I've tried to put an order by in there. And as soon as I try to throw that in there, see, I have to drop it. It's going to be in, oh, let me create it that time. I'm not sure why it let me create it that time and not before. It wouldn't let me create an order by. Huh. Well, I'm real surprised. Sometimes it does. Let me take that top 10% out. Let's see if it'll let me just say select vendor name. Now it says I can't select it, but I can if I do top 10%. That's kind of strange. Many of them, you will not be able to do this. And so, for example, in select top 10% vendor name. Okay, that's better. Many will stop you right there because it says you cannot have an order by in there, but this one is letting me do it. Well, what if it didn't let me do it and I wanted to create a view anyway? I want to create this view, but it stops me when I hit this order by. It says I can't do it. Here we reach for our subselect, create view as CA vendors as select everything from open parentheses. So what's this? This is the subselect. I usually tab these guys over. So what have I got? I've got the order by now buried down in the subselect. So I'm taking the top 10% and I'm working in a, what is the problem? Incorrect syntax. It needs to, I guess I have to. Okay, it's making me name it here when I create a view. So create, okay, when you create a view, all of the fields, everything I'm selecting has to be named. So this would work because the order by is buried down in the subselect. Now, I don't know that the view is going to be ordered, but I know that I'm going to get my top 10%. Does that make any sense? So when it doesn't make any sense to talk about the top 10% unless you have the view ordered, because you don't know what you're going to get. It's just whatever order it's in, it's going to give you the top 10% of the rows. But once I say order by vendor name, but in many database platforms, you cannot say order by in a view. So this is how you do it. You have to bury it down in a subselect. So select everything from, and then here's the subselect that actually gives me my data, and I will have to alias it because one of the requirements of a view is that all of the fields in the view must have names. So everything is going to have to be named. I can't have anything that's not named in a view. Questions? Let's see if I've covered everything. I can insert, update, or I can insert into a view so long as all of the required fields are present in the view. Okay, important point. I can insert into a view so long as all of the required fields are in the view. But what if the view did not have, for example, the vendor ID? So I say select vendor name and vendor city and vendor state and vendor contact and all that stuff, but I don't have the vendor ID in the view. I cannot insert into that view. Why? Because the vendor ID field is not present. Now, if I default that field, so I might have a field that is required. I might have a field, contract, terms ID. Terms ID might default to 0. That would be fine. It's required, but it defaults to 0. If I don't give you one, I put a 0 in there. It's required. I can't put null in there, but if I don't give it anything, it gets a 0. So it's defaulted. Or, so all required fields either have to be present in the view or defaulted. If so, then I can insert into that view. I can update any field that is present in the view, so long as it does not cause it to drop out of the view. the field that decides whether it's in the view or not. For example, I said select vendor name where vendor state is equal to CA. Vendor state was not in the view in that first example. Didn't have to be. What else? Okay, what happens if the SQL query I am acting on contains a table join? Could it? Well, let's see. Let's write a join. Select everything from vendors. Invoices as I on the and I could have a where clause in there. So basically, I'm joining the vendors to invoices, vendor ID, vendor ID. If I execute, I'm going to get a whole bunch of stuff. I get 113 rows. Now, the question is, could I create a view on this? And the answer is yes, I certainly may. Go. Oh, I thought I got it. Okay, what will I call this? I'll call this join view. So here I have create view. Some people will put the as on the next line, some don't. I do like to see this indented. Whether this is whether he goes to the next line or not, it's kind of your business. I don't know why it's. Let's see, what's the problem here? Oh. Well, I give it a name. Okay, I'm not going to be able to say select everything here, so I'm going to have to rename one of the vendor IDs. Can I do it here? It's not letting me do that. Okay, I'm not going to be able to say select everything. I'm going to have to, excuse me. I'm going to have to say select some specific stuff. So I'm going to have to say select vendor ID as Okay, now this should work, and I believe it is. I hope that doesn't keep up. Let's see, so I'm creating a view, and inside of the view I have a table join. You will not be, you have to, I don't know what's killing me tonight. I'm going to have to rename the vendor ID because I can't have two names for it. I got to give him a name. I'm going to have to alias the vendor IDs, and this should work. And it did create the view. Now, okay, here's where I wanted to go with that. When I talk about updating, I say update something, and I change something about it. Can I update this? I'm gonna unmute. I'm gonna mute myself. Okay, unmute. Okay. Now, can I change the invoice ID, for example, where the vendor ID is equal to 4 or something like that? Can I change the invoice ID? And the answer is that you can change the data under these tables, these joined tables, if it can do so with no equivocation. You see what I'm saying there? If I can do so without creating something that, if I tried to say update vendor ID, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I can't update any field. Obviously, I cannot insert a record into a table join. Which table would it put it in? I can update so long as the thing that I'm trying to update is unequivocal. For example, I would be able to update the invoice ID. I would be able to update the vendor name. I would not be able to update the vendor ID because it wouldn't, in the first place, the vendor ID is the join, and it wouldn't know which one to update. So as long as I haven't created an equivocation, a good rule of thumb is you should not try to update a joined table, at least at this state. We're just talking about views, so we're going to stick to fairly simple views here. Questions? Let me unmute. Okay. Questions? Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Natalie, do you have a question? I see you just dropped on the radar.
I don't think so. Not right now.
Okay. Anybody else?
No.
Okay, I'm about to make your guys' day, I guess. I do not intend to give a final examination in the summer term. I don't put a whole lot of stock into high stakes finals. Some people think more of them than I do. I've always done more with the exercises and stuff like that. So I think instead of wasting our time taking a final examination and me having to grade it and all of that, would it be okay if we just skipped it?
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, some of us were hoping to improve the grade.
Okay. As I recall, some of us resubmitted a test.
Yes, we did.
And well, okay, without naming names. And what I would do is I'd go back and regrade that.
Okay.
Might not get to it today, but I will do it. I know I haven't graded it, but I do have it. Okay.
but I have something along that line.
Go ahead.
I had a mind to resubmit mine,
Okay.
but my grade as it stands now, and I think I did well in the second test.
Okay, Byman. I
Yes.
will allow you to resubmit test 1. I won't give full credit on it, but I'll allow you to resubmit it and raise your grade.
When will we know how we did on test 2?
Oh, gee, yeah, that's a good question. When I get it graded, and I'm going to be working on it. Let's see. I've got it all in now, so the test is finished. So I need to start working on that tomorrow.
Okay, and we'll have one more assignment due.
Yes, and I'm sneezing my head off tonight. I don't know why. Something in the air here is killing me. Yes, we will have one more. I'm going to make this assignment the view assignment. I'm going to do some. We are going to meet on Thursday.
Okay. Well, is there going to be potentially another assignment due after that? I just don't know when the last day of classes is, so I want to make sure.
The last day of class is, let's see, everything will have to be turned in by, oh golly, yeah, I won't be able to give an assignment on Thursday, just because Friday is going to be the last day of class, and my grades are due on Monday.
Okay.
So we won't have time. After creating views is going to be pretty simple, and so you should be able to get that done, but we will not have an assignment. We're going to meet, and I'm going to review, and hopefully I'll go over the test 2 with you.
Okay.
And so I hope to have grades for you by then. I should be able to a small class like this.
I have, okay, there are a few other, on the modules, you have list of assignments. How many of them are still due? I did assignment 11, but you haven't graded it.
I don't know. Let me. Goodness gracious. Let me see. Assignment 11 is. I'm gonna have to wrap this up here shortly. Let me get to this.
It was due
modules. Let's see. That would be module 11, right? Or,
yeah.
Okay. That's functions.
Yeah, I did that. But when I tried to do the quiz,
All right. Just saying. Let me see what I've got going on here. Okay. I have a assignment. I have the assignment from Ms. Lee. Byman, I have your assignment. You submitted on July 25th. Anthony Nelson and Natalie Warden, I have your assignments. And I just haven't graded them yet. I'm working on them now. Okay. I'm gonna try to get test 2 done, but those are definitely there, and they're definitely on my. So module 11.
There was a quiz on module 11. I opened it, and we did not cover many of that.
I don't know. Let me look at it here. Module 11 is the next one I've got grading there. Quiz on module 11.
Yeah, we haven't covered some. We didn't know a lot of that. Yeah.
See if I can. Oh, okay. I will take the chapter 9 quiz off. Ranking functions, yes. That's a lot of stuff that we didn't cover, isn't it? Number 6 we should be able to do. I don't worry too much about the quizzes, but since you are right, there's a lot of stuff on there that we skipped over, and those quiz questions come from a quiz bank. So I don't usually go over them real carefully like I do over test questions. So I'll take that quiz off. Okay?
Okay.
Time, how do I get out of it? Okay, I'll get in there and I'll get that quiz turned off. It won't be on the grades. And module 11 is the next one I've got. So module 11 is the only one I haven't graded, well, except for module 13, the indexing assignment, which isn't quite due yet. And practice 2. So the only I'm looking at module 11 is the next one I have to grade. So, and test 2, of course.
So we'll owe you the indexing assignment and the view?
Yeah, the view should be fairly easy. If you look at the what it does there. Indexing assignment, and I do August 7th. Basically, what is this? That's indexing.
And there is an indexing quiz as well.
Right. Okay, views. So there's the view assignment. Indexing assignment, I need to modify the date.
If you take out all the quizzes, you can do the assignments.
Well, I'm going to leave the quiz. Let's see. So I'm going to make it due on Friday. Save. And so I need to have these in by Friday. And I'm going to make the view assignment, the view assignment also due on Friday. Notice this last one here, module 14. I have something called a trigger in there. When I talk about a trigger, you may read that I'm reaching into the next class. So in the next class, one of the first things we do will be triggers. Edit. But that comes after the assignment, so there are no triggers in the assignment. This one will be due. I need to have everything turned in. Okay, so I've told you that it's okay to, turn in stuff that I will grade stuff that is turned in late, but I have to have it in by Friday because my grades are due on Monday. So that means that that gives me the weekend to get my grades tallied, and I have to have everything turned in by Monday. And they beat me about the head and shoulders if I am late getting my stuff turned in. Let me look at this assignment. Create a view that basically, the first thing you do is you write a select statement that gives you back what you want, and then you wrap create view around it. You can have a create view on any SQL statement that does not include an order by. So you have a group by in there, you just have a group by. You can create a view on a group by. Create view, top 10. Okay, same thing. Remember what I talked about there. Now, it will let you do an order by in SQL Server, but I really think that that top 10 ought to be buried down in a subcolumn, so in a subroutine. So I talk about that. I review how to do that right here. Create an updatable view. That's basically just a view that, in an updatable view, vendor address, a vendor ID, both vendor address columns, vendor city, vendor state, vendor zip. That just basically says that I have to have all columns that are required have to be in there. So if I have a required column, in other words, cannot be null, it has to be in there. It doesn't say returns only the vendor ID. If there's anything that is required, you have to add it to the view. Okay, catalog view. I'm going to tell you more about this, about number 4. This one is covered in the textbook, but I haven't covered it yet, but it's 7 o'clock and my allergies are killing me. I'll post an announcement about number 4 because I agree we have not covered that well in class yet. But I'm about to die here. So I'm going to hang up. I'll post an announcement very soon about this one, and it's really easy, but it's talking about the catalog view. And if you look in the textbook, what is the catalog views, and it tells you about that in the textbook, so you ought to be able to get that out of the textbook. Basically, it's just a select statement that where you select one of the predefined views that are defined there. So I'll give you some more information on that and some references to page numbers. Any other questions?
I don't know.
Questions?
The textbook is so brief that Muriach's textbook is.
I agree with you that some parts of it
really explain things well, but get better. We'll see you on Thursday, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna get an announcement out on that, but I think that I think this one is explained sufficiently in the textbook, and I'll give you page references and some examples. So I'll get that out posted to where you can do it easily. It's really just a select statement. Select, and the from is I believe, what am I asking about? Foreign keys. So it's there's a view out there that's called foreign keys, and it gives you the database and everything. And like I say, let me get some examples out there, and it's really easy.
Today's lecture will be recorded and stored. Will that file be there, the practice file where you were showing all the
practice file? This file? Okay.
No,
this file.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of Scratch, but yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll attach the file. Okay, I'm about to sneeze again, so.
Okay, hope you feel better quickly.
Okay, I'm going to end the recording now. Goodness. Okay, good night all.